I walked in and saw him in bed with my best friend. They didn't even flinch, like I was invisible in my own home. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, silent, watching them destroy everything I believed in. But while they were busy playing house, I was already playing chess. That bed they were in, that house they laughed in, the mortgage they never paid, it's all in my name. He cheated with my best friend, but I took the house in court. I used to think we were happy. No, I wanted to believe we were, even when the signs were right there, waving in my face like red flags at a parade. But love makes you blind, and trust makes you stupid. My name is Lauren Taylor. I live in Temecula, California, the kind of town where neighbors wave, dogs bark at 6 a.m., and everyone knows everyone's business. Or at least, they think they do. Ethan and I bought the house 2 years ago. It had a wraparound porch, little rose bushes I planted myself, and a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon toast on Sunday mornings. It was our dream, or at least, my dream. I met Chloe Miller when we were 12. She sat next to me in homeroom and told me my hair looked like a Barbie doll. We've been inseparable ever since. Slumber parties, high school heartbreaks, matching tattoos we got in college even though we both chickened out halfway and ended up with a dot and a smudge. She was the one person I thought would never hurt me. When Ethan proposed, she was the first person I called. She screamed so loud the call dropped. She helped me pick the dress, throw the bridal shower, and fold 147 napkins into little swans. She stood beside me when I said I do, and I never imagined she'd be the one to rip it all apart. But the thing is, it didn't happen all at once. It never does. First, Ethan started coming home later. At first, it was late meeting, then it became drinks with the guys. Eventually, he just stopped offering reasons. I asked once, only once. He rolled his eyes and muttered something about me being paranoid. He kissed me on the forehead, tossed his keys in the bowl, and disappeared into the shower. I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to believe him. Because if it wasn't work, then it had to be something worse. And I wasn't ready for worse. The second sign was Chloe. She started showing up more, unannounced, at weird hours. I'd wake up on a Saturday and find her in my kitchen, pouring coffee like she lived there. No milk again, she'd say, shaking her head. I thought it was just her being Chloe. She'd always been over-familiar, always overstepped. I used to love that about her. Now it just felt off. Then there were the glances. The way she looked at Ethan when she thought I wasn't watching. The inside jokes they laughed at. The way her hand lingered just a second too long on his shoulder. I felt crazy, I really did. Because how do you accuse your husband and your best friend of the unthinkable without sounding like a jealous maniac? So I said nothing. I bottled it all up, smiled through dinners, laughed at their jokes, pretended the knot in my chest wasn't growing tighter every day. I even convinced myself I was imagining it. That's how deep the denial goes when your heart is still in love. Until one night, I forgot my phone at home. It was a stupid thing. I was already halfway to the grocery store when I realized it. I almost didn't turn around. After that night, I didn't sleep, not really. I laid in bed alone while their laughter still echoed in my ears. I could still smell Chloe's perfume on the pillow, still see the dent where Ethan used to rest his head. It was like the house had betrayed me too. But I didn't pack a bag. I didn't leave. Because this wasn't just a house, it was mine. What they didn't know was simple. I paid the down payment, I signed every loan document, and when Ethan's credit didn't qualify, I signed again, a loan. His name wasn't on the deed. Not legally. Not officially. He didn't even realize it, because he never cared enough to ask. And Chloe, she thought she could slip into my life like it was a dress that finally fit her. But that dress was mine. And I was done letting people wear me out. So I started watching, listening, waiting. They didn't try to hide it, not anymore. They thought I was too weak to fight back, too heartbroken to act. But heartbreak is a funny thing. It sharpens you if you let it. One morning, I found Chloe sitting on the porch swing in my robe. She smiled and said, "You should really try yoga. It's helping me sleep better." I stared at her for a full 10 seconds. Then I smiled back, because she thought she was winning. But I had already hired a lawyer. Her name was Sarah Lynn, sharp as glass and twice as dangerous. I showed her the papers, the mortgage, the deed, the texts. She looked at me and said, "You're going to bury them, legally." I didn't want a messy fight, no screaming matches, no confrontations. I wanted precision, strategy. I wanted justice that came in envelopes stamped and notarized. While Chloe and Ethan redecorated the living room, I was printing bank statements. While they hosted wine nights, I was gathering receipts, every light bill, every home repair, every dollar tied back to me. And I didn't stop there. I created a paper trail so strong it could walk into court on its own. But the hardest part was pretending. Pretending not to hear their whispers, not to feel their footsteps beside mine, not to break when Chloe laughed in the kitchen like she belonged there. Sometimes I'd lock myself in the bathroom just to breathe. Count to 10, hold my hands to stop them from shaking. But every time I looked in the mirror, I reminded myself they may have taken my heart, but they would not take my home. Then came the breaking point. It was a Sunday. The sun was out. Chloe was barefoot in the yard, playing fetch with my dog, Cooper. She wore one of Ethan's shirts like it was some badge of honor. I watched from the window, and that's when it hit me. They didn't think I was going anywhere. They thought I'd just disappear, like some forgotten name on a mailbox. So I made my move. I filed the legal motion that Monday, quietly, efficiently, a formal declaration of ownership, and a request for eviction. The court date came fast, too fast for them to catch on. When the papers were served, Ethan looked confused. Chloe. She laughed like it was a prank, but the silence that followed, that was real. The day we walked into court, I wore all black, not because I was mourning, but because I was burying them. They didn't hire a lawyer, didn't even bring documents. They thought it was just some mistake, a misunderstanding, but Sarah laid everything out crystal clear. The deed, the mortgage, the financial records, every signature, every cent. And when the judge turned to Ethan and asked, "Do you have anything to dispute these claims?" He just stood there, mouth open, eyes wide, silent. That silence was the sound of power shifting. The judge declared, "The house legally belongs to Ms. Taylor. Mr. Walker and Ms. Miller have 30 days to vacate the premises." Chloe gasped. Ethan turned red. I didn't blink. Because I wasn't surprised. I was prepared. As we left the courtroom, Chloe tried to speak. "Lauren, please," but I kept walking. Because closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself. And that day I gave myself everything back. My house, my name, my power. But something deep in my gut told me to go back. Not just to get the phone, but because I needed to know. When I walked into the house, the lights were off. It was quiet. Too quiet. I didn't call out. I didn't want them to know I was there. I crept up the stairs, and that's when I heard it. Laughter, whispers, then silence. The kind that presses against your chest and dares you to breathe. I pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were. Ethan, Chloe, my husband, my best friend. Tangled in our sheets, in our bed, like I never existed. They didn't flinch. Didn't even try to hide. Chloe sat up slowly, her eyes wide, but not guilty, no. Not even ashamed. She whispered, "Lauren, please don't ruin this." That's when I knew. They weren't sorry. They weren't caught. They were already living in a world where I was gone. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just stood there, frozen. Then I turned around and walked out. That night, something inside me broke, but something else, something colder, stronger, took its place. And in that silence, I made a promise if they wanted my life so badly they could choke on it. But I was going to take back everything that mattered. And I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to outsmart them. Because they may have played dirty, but I was about to play smart. The day they moved out, it rained. Not a soft drizzle, but a full, angry downpour, like even the sky wanted them gone. I stood at the window in my old sweatshirt, holding a cup of tea that had long gone cold, and watched. Ethan dragged boxes through puddles. Chloe tried to shield a lamp with her coat, a lamp I bought on a rainy anniversary years ago. She dropped it. It shattered. I didn't flinch. Cooper sat by my side, quiet. He used to bark when Ethan walked in. Now he didn't even move. It took them 4 hours. 4 hours to erase the life they thought they owned. They didn't look at me, not once. And I didn't wave goodbye. When the last box was gone, I closed the door, locked it, and leaned my back against it like I'd just survived a war. But survival isn't the same as healing, and silence isn't the same as peace. The next morning, the house was still, too still. I walked through every room, bedroom, kitchen, living room. I touched walls, opened closets, pulled open drawers just to prove I was alone. It was mine again, but it felt like a crime scene. There were memories embedded in every inch. Ethan's cologne in the hallway, Chloe's laughter in the kitchen, the ghost of betrayal heavy in the air. So I did the only thing I could. I started over. I painted the bedroom first, bright white like a reset. Then the living room. I replaced the couch, tossed the pillows, threw away the wine glasses they loved so much. I scrubbed every inch until my fingers ached. It wasn't just cleaning, it was reclaiming. Then I opened the closet and saw the wedding dress, still zipped in plastic, still perfect, still pretending. I took it outside, to the fire pit. It burned fast, too fast, like it had been waiting for the match. And when the last piece turned to ash, I felt something crack. Not pain, not grief, freedom. People think revenge is loud, that it's all shouting and slamming doors. But mine came in papers, in courtrooms, in silence. And every day after that, I rebuilt. I got new sheets, new dishes, new routines. I started waking up early, going on long walks with Cooper, making breakfast just for me, eggs, toast, quiet. I filled the silence with music. Not sad music, not breakup songs, but piano, jazz, instrumental pieces that made the walls feel new. I planted new flowers, peonies this time. Chloe hated peonies. That's exactly why I chose them. Some days were still hard. Some nights. I'd lie awake and hear echoes I couldn't explain, but I didn't run from them. I let them pass. Because I had nothing left to hide. A few weeks later, I got a letter from Ethan. No return address, just a few scribbled lines. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I hope someday you can forgive me. I didn't reply. Forgiveness isn't something you owe people, especially not those who never asked for permission before they broke you. A month later, Chloe tried to call. I let it ring. Then I blocked her. Because healing isn't about answers, it's about boundaries. I started therapy, talked, cried, breathed, unlearned every lie I once accepted as love. And slowly, the house stopped whispering their names. It learned to speak mine again. I hosted dinner, just for me and two old friends. We ate on the porch, laughed until midnight. They said, "You look different." I said, "I feel different." 'Cause I did. The woman they broke, she's gone. Buried under court documents and fresh paint in a fire pit full of ashes. What remains is someone stronger, quieter, sharper. Someone who doesn't flinch at betrayal, she dismantles it. Someone who doesn't raise her voice, she raises her standards. And someone who doesn't beg to be loved, because she already loves herself enough to walk away and shut the door behind her. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about taking back space, my space, in the world, in my mind, in my life. Because betrayal doesn't just evict you from love, it evicts you from yourself. But slowly, brick by brick, I was rebuilding. Not just the home, but the woman who owned it. One morning, I got a call from Sarah, my lawyer. She said, "You won't believe what Ethan filed." I braced myself. A lawsuit, an appeal. No, worse. He filed for equitable interest in the house. Claimed he'd contributed enough to deserve part of it. I laughed, actually laughed, in a way I hadn't in months. Because that's what cowards do. When they can't win with lies, they try paper. But what he didn't realize was that I'd already fortified every wall. I had documents, evidence, proof. Every repair, every payment, every dime was mine. Sarah told me not to worry, but I did. Not because I feared losing, but because I hated that he still thought he had a claim on my life, on my peace. So we went back to court. Again, I dressed in black, not to mourn, but to signal power. This time, Ethan brought a lawyer. Too late, too little. He tried to paint himself as the victim. Said he'd contributed emotionally to the household, said he had nowhere to go. I stared at him across the courtroom. This man I once loved. This man who chose lies over loyalty. This man who now begged for scraps from a table he burned. When the judge asked me to speak, I stood slowly. My voice didn't shake. I said, "Your Honor, I'm not here to argue emotion. I'm here to stand on facts. I have paid for every square foot of that home. Alone. I have rebuilt it. Alone. And I intend to protect it alone." Silence, thick, heavy, electric. Then the gavel, request for equitable interest denied. It echoed, like thunder, like justice. Outside the courtroom, Ethan tried to catch up with me. He said, "I just thought maybe we could talk." I turned, looked him in the eyes. "No, I said we already did. You just weren't listening." Then I walked away. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't look back. That night, I sat on the porch, just me, the crickets, and a glass of wine that tasted like peace. I didn't need a celebration. I didn't need applause. Because the win, it was internal, it was spiritual, it was mine. I thought of all the women who'd been told to forgive and forget, who'd been called crazy for following their instincts, who'd been gaslit out of their own realities. This win wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who ever had her home invaded, not by strangers, but by the people she trusted most. I lit a candle. Not for mourning, Sator, but for honor, for the girl I was, for the woman I'd become. Ethan didn't show up again, no more letters, no more calls. And Chloe, she moved across the country, started a new life, with someone else. I wish I could say I didn't care, but the truth I did. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to be remembered. I wanted her to lie awake sometimes and feel the ghost of what she did. And maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, But me, I sleep just fine. In clean sheets, in a safe house, under a roof built by truth. And every now and then, I walk past the mirror and smile at the woman staring back. Because she didn't just survive, she outlived them. They say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time only creates distance. It's what you do with that distance that heals. I didn't wake up one day magically over it. I rebuilt myself piece by piece, like a mosaic made of every shard they left behind. And strangely, it was beautiful. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. Simple things, laughing without fear, dancing in the kitchen, sleeping with the windows open. I traveled, alone, took a road trip up the coast, listened to old music, wrote letters I never sent, found joy in my own silence. Because silence wasn't lonely anymore, it was sacred. People asked what happened. I never told the full story. Not because I was ashamed, but because some victories don't need to be explained. Some stories are best kept between you and the strength you had to grow. Months passed, the house changed. It was brighter, lighter, alive. I started renting out the guest room to travelers, writers, artists, people passing through, chasing peace. They always said the same thing, this place feels safe. And I'd smile, because it was. Then one evening I got a call, blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. It was Chloe's sister. She said Chloe was in town, at a hospital, something about surgery, complications. She said, she asked about you. I didn't know what to say. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there in silence. Part of me wanted to visit, to see her face one last time, to say everything I never said. But I didn't, because closure isn't about final conversations. It's about choosing peace over chaos. And I had already chosen. The next day, I walked the trail behind the house, the same one Ethan and I used to hike, the same one where Chloe once took my photo under the old oak tree. I stood there again, years later, alone, but not empty. Full, whole, unshaken, I whispered to the wind, thank you. Not to them, but to the storm, to the betrayal, to the pain. Because without it, I wouldn't have burned down the lies, wouldn't have cleared the rubble, wouldn't have found the blueprint beneath it all to build something real, a life, a home, a self reborn. Sometimes people ask if I regret not taking them back, if I ever missed what we had. I don't, not for a second, because love built on betrayal is a house with termites. Looks solid, but it crumbles the second you lean in. And me, I don't lean anymore, I stand. I don't beg, I build. And if you ask me what I learned through it all, I'd say this. Never let someone live in your soul if they wouldn't even fight for space in your heart. Never trust people who lie with a smile. And never forget the quietest revenge is ownership. Of your home, of your story, of your power. He cheated with my best friend, but I didn't scream, I didn't break. I just took the house and everything they thought I couldn't survive without. Now I thrive without it. A year later, I hosted my first retreat. It wasn't planned, not really. It started with one friend crashing for the weekend, just needing space after her own breakup. Then another, then another. Before I knew it, the guest room had a waiting list. They called it the Reclaim House, a place where women came to remember who they were before the world broke them. And I became something I never expected, a guide, a witness, a reminder that peace is possible after the storm. One night, we sat around a fire in the backyard, 6 women, 6 stories, different pain, same betrayal. I didn't share my full story. I didn't have to. They felt it in the way I spoke, in the way the house held them like a secret, like safety. One woman asked, "Do you ever wish you could undo it all?" I looked at the flames, then back at her. "No," I said, "because if I did, I wouldn't be here, and neither would you." There was silence, but the good kind, the kind that says everything without a single word, the kind I used to be afraid of. The house, once full of ghosts, now echoed with healing, with piano chords and shared coffee, with tearful laughter and quiet resilience. I started writing again, not for anyone else, just for me. Journals, poems, even a few letters addressed to the girl I used to be. I wrote, "You did not fail, they did, and you rose anyway." Some mornings, I walk the backyard barefoot, feel the dew on my toes, close my eyes. The past doesn't haunt me anymore. It shaped me, but it doesn't define me. And every time a woman leaves this place with her head held higher than when she arrived, I know the story was worth living, even the worst parts. Because from those ashes, I built a sanctuary. He cheated, she betrayed, but I created something untouchable. Not just a house, but a legacy of strength, of silence, of starting over. And that, my friend, is the real ending.